Welcome to GLOBEWATCH with me, Charles Ebune. We are 1 billion migrants across the world, according to the United Nations International Organization for Migration. Some 363,000 people crossed across the Mediterranean last year, and this year so far, some 31,000 have already crossed, causing some 664 deaths or missing. The situation is even more complicated, with more bad news coming this week from the International Organization for Migration, with states having gathered evidence of migrants complaining being sold into the black market of the Libyan coast as the downfall of Muammar Gaddafi becomes increasingly more chaotic since 2011. Why are we in this new form of slavery in the world when the International Labour Organization clearly states at least some 21 million forced laborers exist in the world? My guest today is a former member of the African diaspora in Germany and served as an advisor to some German and African presidents, especially Germany and Malagasy, and is a senior policy advisor at the Berlin-based Global Cooperation Council. Kennedy Tumenta, welcome to GLOBEWATCH.
Thank you very much, Charles.
If I am elected president, we will secure the border and we will end the illegal immigrant. Senator Ted Cruz, former American Republican presidential candidate. I understand that you have advised German and some African presidents. During your discussion with them, just how much was illegal immigration recurrent in your discussion?
Illegal immigration has always been a topic. As a diasporas or as an African immigrant based in Europe, in my days as an advisor, it's always very difficult for these leaders to address issues of illegal immigration. But they always look at it from the positive point of view. With the German government, they always want to look at how can we figure out positive ways of solving migration problem. With the African Union, it was a different story. How could we actually create a facilitation platform where we can attract and promote legal migration so that African diasporas can help to develop the continent?
You were a European Union facilitator of the African Union, African Diaspora 6th region, and the Pan-African Diaspora meetings, which was intended to build global cooperative new alliances with Africa. Statistics indicate that, especially a book written by Professor Jean-Emmanuel Pondy, that movements between African countries, it at least 80%. What has been the attitudes of leaders vis-a-vis illegal immigration?
In Africa?
In Africa in particular.
I think the African continent is facing a very big problem. The idea of a united and integrated Africa and its diasporas is in the literature. It is in the African constitutions. And Article 3Q of the African Union actually calls for African government to be able to attract the diasporas to be a united and integrated Africa. But on the contrary, we still have barriers. I think we need both leaders in Africa to be able to create platforms where and remove barriers that to permit Africans to move across the continent using legal channels. So I think on the continent, on the one hand, you find the African Union coming out with policies, asking governments to facilitate free movements of Africans within the continent, at least within the regional economic communities. But as you best know, in many regional economic communities, it's still difficult for citizens to actually move within this region.
But let me go back to a country like Germany, where you stayed for long. This is a country, of course, that needs a lot of young people to work because of its aging population. What has been the attitudes, internal policy attitudes of German leaders? For example, you advise a German president towards immigration, apart from the public dialectics that we know. Internally, when you sit and discuss with them off mic, what is the attitude? What is the atmosphere in such discussions, for example?
I think many German leaders are aware of the fact that many Germans during the Second World War and after the Holocaust processes, many Germans migrated out. And many Germans were also killed. And so Germany benefited a lot from migrants. For example, the Czechs moved into Germany and constructed Germany. But those were legal migrations. So at least Germany knows that in a few years, they are having a lot of aging populations. So it's about strategies. How do we get the best brains?
Does that historical input in any way give a sense of Chancellor Angela Merkel's attitudes towards illegal immigrants, be those in the form of refugees coming from Syria, coming from Libya, coming from war-torn zone? Is that possible to understand it from that way?
We can see it from three phases. We have the historical part of view that the Germans actually benefited from that. So they are very open to receive refugees. On the other hand, we also have the Christian Democratic parties, the CDU. They actually, as Angela Merkel, head of this, I mean, they have a very moral obligations to be able to solve some of this crisis. So you see a consistent pattern in Germany from the SPD party, the Green parties, and also with Angela Merkel's party. They have continuously welcomed and open facilitation processes to attract migrants. I think Germany in Europe is one of the countries that has a very good processes in managing migration.
Well, why Germany may have a good migration policy is not probably the case with most European Union member countries. You can take the case of Hungary, where there are even concentration camps to block these illegal immigrants from coming. You can take countries that, like Greece, which are under severe stressed economic situation. But let me just give you statistics from one of the major routes of which illegal immigrants enter into Europe using the Italian coast. Figures from Italy's Ministry of Interior indicate over 11,000 migrants arrived in Italy via the Mediterranean in March, that is this year, more than the number arriving in either March 2016 or March 2015. Roughly 27,000 migrants this year have left Libya for Italy through the year's 99 days. That is over 7,000 more than the number arriving through the same period last year. Are you surprised by such increasing figures of illegal immigrants?
I'm not really surprised.
Why?
We are living in a world of dichotomy. On the one hand, we have an increase in information and communication technology. Some countries are prospering, and it's very easy for people to be able to see these issues, to see that there is economic benefits happening in other countries. On the other hand, we have devastations, war-torn regions. We have bad governance. You have failed state, in quote, you have failed state in certain areas. And then you have young people who are great entrepreneurs aspiring for a better future. So it is a human instinct.
Failed state example in Somalia.
In Somalia, you have, I can't call Syria a failed state, absolutely, but if you look at that area, Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, and so on and so forth, and even looking at Ukraine, something that we are not, people do not really look at it. But people do not have aspirations. And what happens when you don't have aspiration within a confined environment, you tend to look for where you can have a better hopes and aspiration to build a fulfilled life. But
do you see the departure of Muammar Gaddafi as one of the major contributing factors of people using the Libyan coast today mostly to travel to Europe? Because most people consider the Gaddafi period as one in which can be called the stabilizing element of using the Mediterranean route through the Italian coast. Is that a major worry?
Yes, I think I'm one of those who differed from a lot of policymakers around the world who believe that we can easily remove stable dictators, stable inconvenient governments and replace them. I mean, history has proven in the past 15 years that you can. I think Mohammed Gaddafi, despite the challenges that he might have, and despite his past record, was a stabilizing factors in that region. And that is why in the end of his own term, he discovered that to solve the pressure of immigration, we have to build a strong and united African Union. But unfortunately, it is a chaos. And it's not just a chaos for Libya, but it has devastating effect for the international community.
Statistics from the International Organization for Migration, the UN watchdog, that monitors the movement of people worldwide, indicates that at least 664 people have died this year crossing the Mediterranean into Europe. That is an increase as compared to 554 same period last year. Which area of the world produces the largest number of illegal immigrants?
Well, it's difficult to say which area of the world, because if people are looking at Africa and the Middle East producing illegal immigrants. But on the other hand, if you look at statistics from Mexico, Mexicans moving into the United States, if you look at statistics from migrants leaving Indians to other part of the world, you look at statistics leaving Russia and even China, then we might try to adjust it. But I don't want to go look at the statistics from that part. We have a problem. I think we have a problem, and the problem is that international community counts numbers. I mean, 6 deaths is not a problem. 10 deaths is not a problem. In Lampedusa, the Lampedusa crisis in 2014 and 2011, it was a lot of Africans and Middle East migrants died looking for greener pasture. We keep on counting numbers. I don't know when we could sit back on the drawing board and try to see how we can address this problem, either by creating good opportunities in the African regions and in the crisis-torn regions, or facilitating legal migration to permit that people could go.
The western or central route, it's probably through Italy. You have the eastern route, which passes through Greece around Laos, and you have the Spanish corridor, which is the western entry point. To this can be added Agades from the trans-Saharan area, which of course follows the normal trans-Saharan slave trade route, and to this can be added the Atlantic belt around the Mediterranean. And I just want you to describe to me how difficult are these routes for people to use?
Well, as you could see, the routes are very, very difficult. Not because of the transportation processes, it's because we have intermediaries, smugglers. Right? It's not just the route crossing, but it's also the route from the country of departure. So what we are seeing is that we have smugglers, we have bandits. I mean, this is a group of bandits and thieves and organized crimes that they have now created a network across the roads, coupled with the environmental challenges. I have had witnesses with some migrants in refugee camps in Germany, where I spend most of my time as a volunteer advising them, and their stories were very, very devastating. You know, sometimes some of them are forced to eat people on the road, crossing the desert, because survival of the fittest. When somebody dies, they have nothing to eat, and they know that crossing the desert on feet, it might take you 3 days, 4 days, but once you can't, somebody died, you either eat or you continue and die. So we have migrants that did these things, but unfortunately, they still continue to live. The issue is not the difficulties of the routes, but why do they actually live? And can we stop it? And when are we going to stop it? And this is a very complex situation, because it's not only the rules of the government, but we need to start doing sensitization campaigns at all levels.
Well, you were president of the African Diaspora Students Union in Germany. When you people go to Europe, because the essential factor is that, okay, when I go to Germany, I will pick euros on the streets. When I go to the United States of America, I will see dollars hanging somewhere and I can easily get them. Do you think that some of you of the diaspora who have had this experience, you pass through legal migratory processes? Life is not even, first of all, easy when you use the legal channels. Do you think that you are honest enough to those young people either in Africa or Middle East or Asia that, look, that place is not heaven? Do you think that you are doing your job well?
I think we are trying. The issue is to convince and let them understand that it is difficult. And that is why we, as the African Union, African Diasporas processes, beside our remittances, sending monies back home, a lot of diasporas have opened civil society organizations to be able to support their countries of origins. I have, with other African diasporas, moved back to many African countries to be able to explain to them. But it's very funny because this guy has no aspiration, has no job, has no perspective, and you are there, healthier, telling him that he shouldn't go abroad. So the issue for us is not about moralizations. It's about creating alternative opportunities for them to be able to make the same choice.
A while ago, you said that when these people are traveling, they go through the hands of criminal gangs, of smugglers. Those are words you just used a while ago. The International Organization of Migration just recently stated that they have had people complaining that they are sold into slavery in the black market in Libya, where there is a major crisis now. Are you shocked to hear such testimonies in the 21st century, where the International Organization the International Labour Organization states that we already have 21 million forced laborers in the world?
I'm very shocked. I'm not shocked because of the issues of slavery. We have human slavery going on. I mean, there's a lot of documentary, the CNN documentary on human slavery, and proved a lot in the Western
The
Hemisphere.
Freedom Project.
The Freedom Projects. But unfortunately, that Africans sells Africans. It's something which is pathetic. I mean, something has to change. I mean, black Africans, black lives are sold within the market. I mean, we have, in 2014, we tried to advise the IOM and with the German government, letting them understand that we need to do something because the Lampedusa crisis or the boats collapse is just the tips of the iceberg. What happens before the boats is something that it is imaginary, we cannot imagine. But unfortunately, now we are happy that the IOM has finally proven, documented, there are slave markets. But how do you penetrate such areas? It's very difficult. In Libya, they have been sold. The routes going through Eritrea and going towards the Middle East, they are still sold. And between Niger and Libya, Africans are being sold, and sometimes not Africans back in their countries. Let's say in some countries, like the report actually shows, Ghanaians and Nigerians and others, they're part of this system. So it's pathetic. It's something that we cannot imagine, selling human being. I mean,
well, by the end of 2015, the United Nations Refugee Agency clearly stated that there are 63 million displaced people in the world, roughly refugees. What actually should be done to reduce these numbers? What can be done concretely to control illegal immigration? Because if you take a country like Syria, which has produced at least 5 million refugees over the past 6 years because of the Arab Spring version there, it seems very difficult to elaborate policies that accommodate with time.
I think we can look at it from 3 angles. The first angle is good governance. Second angle is creating opportunities for people in their countries of origin. Wherever this is not possible, we have to create better channels for legal migrations. We have to. Countries can benefit in cultural diversity.
But you see, those governments will tell you that they are extremely doing their best to provide opportunities for their young people. I can take the case of Nigeria, where they will tell you that the National Youth Employment Service is there to bring everybody on board and elaborate strategies. You have investors across Africa who are extremely investing to ensure that there is sustainable development, especially for young people in the enterprising sector. I can take the Tony Elumelu Foundation, I can take Aliko Dangote, just like I can give you the Rwandan experience where all of these processes are going through. We have had the European Union through the Malta Conference and initiative to combat illegal immigration, but these policies are not working. What is missing?
I don't believe that the policies are not working. We have to give these policies and programs the time for it to mature. We can't, entrepreneurship and economic transformation cannot be taught in schools. These are conscious processes and accommodation programs. In many African countries, we do not have incubators, business incubation centers and mentoring systems. Of course, Obama's administration with its yearly programs tries to bring and helps young Africans to understand the reality both in other African countries and also in the United States.
Maybe I should tell my audience that you were one of those who walked behind the doors for the Young African Initiative yearly, or what is termed today the Mandela Washington Fellowship, which is of course a network of at least 25,000 young Africans today. But you said young incubators on the continent to encourage these processes. Countries like Ghana have done that. Countries like South Africa have done that. So many of these countries have done those elements you are talking about. You talk of good governance. The Mo Ibrahim Foundation has this award of best governance practices in Africa, so that enabling environments can be more and more increasing. But still at this level, it's not working. Where is the block?
To have loans and financial services for these young people is very difficult within the African continent.
But
they don't have guarantees.
But those are the realities of the banking system.
But excuse me, I mean, countries out of Africa, they are making billions. It's just a conscious mind to invest this in their youth. I think we need to, sometimes I tell my students in school that in many African countries, we don't have the word future. We have what is called an intertemporal future. So, but we need to try to invest in the opportunities and conditions that will enable our youth to benefit while not compromising the opportunities of the current generations. But we do not. But just to get back to your point, one thing I want you to understand is that we need to have a Marshall Plan in Africa to be able to create opportunities so that we can achieve the African Union's Agenda 2063?
Well, according to World Bank estimates, at least 581 billion was spent in 2015 by migrants across the world as remittances. What has been the byproduct of the remittances of the African diaspora?
The most important thing is that the remittances of the African diaspora
in helping solve issues like those of illegal immigration, in doing over the country flow control systems.
Well, I think most of these resources have been geared to solve social pressure. We accept that most of this thing was geared to solve family and social problems. Now we are moving to phase 2 of the remittances. That's where diasporas have now started opening companies and channeling this money to be able to support businesses and so on.
You imagine to be an advisor to the International Organization for Migration, the European Union, and other stakeholders in ensuring that there is a stabilization of the inflow of illegal immigrants across the Mediterranean, where it is more and more a deadly business. What will you propose in particular?
First thing we have to do, which I called the emergency pack, would be to send a special task force to be able to root out these criminals. And then we open a special file on at the International Criminal Court on these bandits, I call them. And at the second point, we need to first of all try to solve the problem at its roots. I mean, we need to solve the problem at its roots. And here we need to have multiple programs, sensitization program, as well as alternative. But at the same time, we should not forget that migration is something, a human right.
Well, legal migration is not the problem, but the problem is illegal immigration.
Charles, one thing you need to understand is that by making sure that the conditions to fulfill the conditions to have legal procedures to immigrate out of your country, if it's very difficult, we are indirectly giving incentive for illegal migrations. There are many countries that in the researches we did, we discovered that just to have a student visa, an appointment for a student visa in certain countries is 2 months, 3 months, 5 months. And just imagine a young graduate doesn't have the opportunity to apply. After 2 months, schools have already started. And then frustration gets in, despair sets in, and then he needs to go. So I think one thing we need to do is to facilitate possibilities for legal migrations. Hasten it. People should be able to know, accepted or not accepted.
Kennedy Tumenta, thank you very much indeed for being guest on GlobeWatch.
You're welcome.